Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. It's going to be quite a Friday morning here as we respond to, analyze, dissect, and kind of recover from last night's dark vision of America presented by a very angry president of the United States. Well, you're not the only one, Joe Biden. A few of us are a little ticked off, too. Coming up at 7:05, Representative Rob Whitman of Virginia will get his reaction. 7:35, Tim Graham of Media Research Center on how the media handled the speech and also how they're going to handle this 9-month stretch ahead of us until election
that's
day.
A baby. That's a gestational period.
We are all, and by November, we're going to be feeling like we're going into labor.
Oh.
At 8:05, I mean, I can only presume what it feels like to go into labor, Patrice. I'm sorry for
it's
that's like a stolen valor thing there for a man to say that.
No, it's okay, but it is an experience that if you've never done it, you will not understand.
8:05, KT McFarland, State of the Union, and also about national security issues. I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Patrice Onwuka.
Happy Friday.
Yes, it is a happy Friday. It is. I remember Bill Cosby used to have an old joke about how for a man to understand what it feels like for a woman to go into labor. Mm-hmm. It's a really simple thing you can do.
Okay.
Take your lower lip, grab onto it, and then pull it up over your head. And then you'll have a little idea of what it's like for a woman.
Maybe less than a tenth of a percentage.
My mother used to say it was like a hot poker stuck in my eye. Like I grew up with a lot of guilt as a child.
A hot poker.
Don't say, even if it's true, don't say that to your child. I grew up thinking that I caused my mother so much pain. I mean, I did, but not that kind of pain. But imagine being my mother.
Well, I mean, she has boys that turned out pretty good. So the pain was worth the product.
Do you notice that I'm trying my best to avoid talking about last night's speech? What we saw.
Oh, my goodness.
For over an hour,
the
American people were screamed at by an angry, bitter, partly incoherent old man, and rather than some sort of vision for what this man would like to do in this final year, and I guess he's trying to make the case for 4 years in addition, he didn't offer a vision. He offered division. He offered further division in this nation. He even turned his wrath on the Supreme Court.
Yes, he did.
Sitting in front of him.
Inappropriately.
He blatantly ignored, a lot of people are talking about the father of the Gold Star Marine who was killed in action in Afghanistan, and the outrageous fact that he was arrested, considering we have, pro-Hamas protesters disrupting
right outside the Capitol building.
Every day we have them doing this, and they don't get arrested. And of course, they should be talking about that moment, because I'm not a big heckle guy. But if my child was killed in action because of the decisions of this man, and now going on the third State of the Union, he still refuses to even acknowledge what happened, let alone say the names.
Yes.
I might have to stand up and start yelling. And people have to understand, the moment that he was heckled by that Gold Star father, it was at the moment where he was trying to tell the American people how safe this country is right now. And of course, he sort of lost it there and said it wasn't safe for my son at Abbey Gates. It's where to begin here. I mean, that's sort of my son. Other than, I thought he could go either way. I've talked about it all week. He could either do what we saw him do, or he could have tried, since it's an election year, to sort of put on the facade of, I think we can work together. I've been here 50 years. I work with my good friend Republicans like John McCain and Mitt Romney all the time. So let's let our better angels be our guide and figure out what we can do for the American people, instead of constantly finding out what's different.
He wanted to do.
No, he sure didn't.
That's not what he wanted to do.
He sure didn't.
So who we saw saw last night is the authentic, true Joe Biden. It is not Joe Biden that was pitched on the campaign trail in 2020, which was going to be uniter in chief. This is Joe Biden behind closed doors with his staff yelling, minus the expletives.
That's a great point.
That is the only thing that was missing from him last night.
Patrice, we heard all these stories about how he's, calling Netanyahu an a-hole and it's F this and F that. All those stories that were leaked out.
Dropping the F-bombs.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's so we saw that guy.
Cursing out his staff every time he makes a gaffe or he looks like he's incompetent.
Yeah.
We saw what they get to see every day. So to me, this is good because I think they thought that this was going to be the Biden that's young and, well, maybe not young, but sprightly, can be in attack mode. Showing his vigor, creating this contrast between him and Trump. And he's supposed to be a fighter. He did not come across that way. He came across as petulant. He came across as petty. He came across as someone who cannot stand above the fray and be presidential. He came across as someone that Nikki Haley supporters that they're trying to get and woo have no reason to want to put in back to keep in office.
They have one reason, and that is they don't like Donald Trump.
Well, that's the only reason.
But you said something really interesting there. Yeah. Contrast between Biden and Trump. One thing he may have had going for him in 2020, or maybe he was hoping to have going for him now, is this contrast. It's like the suburban moms were always talking about them. It's like, well, Trump he's so mean and he's so divisive and he says these things and it's just, I'm just tired of that. Well, if Biden
not friendly grandpa.
If Biden tried to show that he was offering something different than that, I mean, one thing I think if you believe that Trump is angry and divisive and toxic for our political environment, you sure got to concede that we've got that's a wash here between the two.
Exactly. I think the campaign and his staff wanted to show, well, he can stand up there for an hour and go on and be strong. I don't know what they did, how many naps he took beforehand, what it took to make him stand up there and be up there for that amount of time.
I think we need to have mandatory drug testing for the president at the State of the Union.
I will just make that veiled suggestion or idea. But, he didn't do himself a favor. And I don't think he made an argument or a case for why he should get 4 more years. He just made a case for why, I should be still running at the top of the ticket. And this is why. And you know what? For the people who are going to vote for him, they're going to vote for him anyway, whether he is soft, Grandpa Joe, or, senile, petulant Grandpa Joe. They're going to vote for him. It's the people that I think he's trying to win over that saw from him last night, everything he said he would never be or not or wasn't. And now they're just seeing the real him.
It's angry old man Joe. And it's angry old man Joe. And why is he angry? He's angry that he even has to bother to make the case.
Yeah.
He's angry that he's behind right now because, my God, look at the despicable piece of human scum that I'm running against, because he believes all of that. And again, this is really about the voter. He's not angry at Trump. He's angry at the voters for actually making him go through this process, considering it, like this guy, yeah, Joe, that guy. He did a lot better job as president than you're ever going to do. We're going to play some of these highlights now that you've heard our reaction to it. But I got to say, Joe Biden is giving – I never thought I would have this kind of reaction after a major speech by Joe Biden in an election year. He has given Donald Trump an opening here. He has given him a lane to be able to present himself as the fun sort of, friendly guy. I mean, and I think he is a fun, friendly guy. And if he in the next couple of rallies or next couple of media appearances can really go overboard in sort of softening part of his approach and showing that contrast, he's got a huge opportunity.
He does have an opportunity
to fill a lane here that Joe Biden has given him. All right, a little bit more. And an amazing string of events there with regard to Laken Riley.
Yes.
The murder of the young woman in Georgia. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we had on the program yesterday.
Okay.
Forcing Joe Biden to say Laken Riley's name. And he did, sort of. I mean, he got her name wrong, But
we knew who he was talking about.
And it was a moment that really sort of defined a bit of this presidency and the State of the Union. And by the way, when he did say Laken Riley's name and acknowledged her murder, Democrats got really angry at him. Nancy Pelosi got really ticked off about it. Not at the murder of Laken Riley, but at the words that Joe Biden used to discuss it. We'll share all of that with you in just a moment. First, though, it's 5:15.
Later this morning on the Chris Plant Show, Joe Biden's last State of the Union address and President Trump's rolling commentary. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
Yeah, no, it's obviously very harsh times. And look, you saw him walk in, and one of the more loud members of the Republican Party, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman from Georgia, put on a MAGA hat.
Which is not allowed.
Which is not allowed. You're not allowed to do that, and I mean, according to the rules of the House and Senate. And she was wearing a pin referring to Biden's border crisis, quote unquote.
What?
I can
really,
I
Jake
can spend
Tapper.
Yes, really, Jake Tapper. We need to give up the myth that Jake Tapper is one of the reasonable ones up there. I could spend half an hour unpacking just that 25 seconds. First, he's searching for the words and how to describe Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the more, shall we say, loud members. First of all, why do you even need a descriptor? Why can't you just say the Republican member from Georgia? No, that wouldn't be good enough. And their big issue here is that she put a MAGA hat on. That's not allowed, That's not allowed. And she was wearing a pin that referred to Biden's border crisis, so-called. What do you mean so-called? Even the administration admits that it's a crisis. They're just not blaming Biden. But it didn't refer to the Biden crisis. The pin she was wearing was about Laken Riley. It said, say her name, Laken Riley. And she confronted Joe Biden as he was coming down the aisle. She was smart, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She positioned herself right next to Sheila Jackson Lee.
That's the place to be.
Oh, baby.
You will always get to shake hands with the president if you were next to Sheila Jackson Lee.
And so she handed him the button, and it sounded like this, because she tapes everything. She has either her own phone or a staffer with a phone.
Right behind him, and I believe that's a hat that says Make America Great Again.
A MAGA hat, and then there are buttons that we understand that some Republicans will be wearing, talking about the border. The Biden border crisis.
So that's the commentary on it. But she's actually got, I'll try to grab the video. She made her own video of her exchange with the president saying, say her name, say her name. At one point, when talking about various security or crime and law and order issues, she interjected and said, Laken Riley, say her name. He reached down and grabbed the button. And then this is what happened.
I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
Did he just admit that thousands of people get killed by illegal immigrants in this country?
No. Let me unpack it for you. First of all, he called her Lincoln Riley instead of Laken Riley.
Yeah, wrong.
Number one. Number two, killed by an illegal. We'll get to that in a minute. But then said, but how many thousands of people are killed by legals? In other words, hey, sure, one person died by an illegal, as he put it. But, we got thousands of people killed by people who are here in the country legally. So what's your problem? Which, by the way, is kind of an admission that we have a huge crime problem in this country. But secondly, if he doesn't understand the additional outrage and heartbreak when you find out your child has been murdered by a person who should have never been here in the first place.
Exactly.
And they had in
That's
custody
and
they could have deported. But then again, oh God, quintessential Joe Biden. He turns to the parents who are in the gallery as a guest of Marjorie Taylor Greene and says, my heart goes out to you as someone who has lost my child as well. His son died of cancer, but he always has to make it about himself instead of just having compassion and empathy for the parents who are still grieving. Instead, it's like, I lost my kid. Not quite the same thing, Joe.
So, few points.
Sorry, I'm a little angry right now.
I can tell, and that's good. You deserve to be. Number one, this is why his handlers and his campaign do not want him to go off script.
Yeah.
He went off script many times last night, and CNN is calling it ruckus, his speech. This is why when he goes off script, they can't control what he's going to say, and he's going to say the quiet part out loud, namely that we have people in this country illegally who are committing murder and killing regular Americans. This murder, as you rightly said, would not have happened.
Yeah.
Something else about what he said here. He makes it about himself very often, but in that moment, he missed that opportunity to go off script and then turn the issue back on. He could have pivoted and said, well, you know what? This is why we need the immigration package that I put through my support behind.
Well,
he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't. He made it, again, about himself. And then he's like, well, what's the big deal? Crime is everywhere.
Exactly.
And we should not have to accept that crime is everywhere.
So, Nancy, you said his handlers get upset because he goes off script and then he says things like this, right?
The quiet part out loud.
You know what upset them the most?
What?
I think Nancy Pelosi said it best on CNN. You will never guess. Out of that entire statement, she's not upset about the murder. She's not upset about him conceding that there's tons of murders being done by people here legally. She's not upset. No, here's what she's upset about.
Now, you should have said undocumented, but that's not a big thing, okay? What's the big thing about it?
No, I actually wasn't even going to ask about that. I was just going to ask more about the moment. But you do think that he should have said undocumented? That wasn't going to be my question.
Well, we usually say undocumented.
She's upset that he said murdered by an illegal instead of murdered by an undocumented. She's doing politically correct woke word police here. The real problem is that he said illegal.
Yeah, well, Democrats love to own the language and then make sure that it takes the sting out of what's out of the truth. If you're not here legally, you're here illegally.
Yeah.
And you're an illegal alien.
Thank
so
you.
You're not an illegal person on this planet. No one is, but you are here illegally in this country.
I am just glad that Nancy Pelosi
That's what she cares
and
about,
her
though.
friends in the Democratic Party, they have found something to be outraged about with regard to the murder of Laken Riley.
Well, it's a
that
start.
Her murderer is called illegal. It's a start. He's always looking on the upside. It's 5:12. We've got more State of the Union throughout the morning here, and for this.
Goodness.
Post-mortem
so much
of the most
get to
political,
with this.
divisive, angry, maddening, outrageous State of the Union in our history. More to come. It's 5:24. All right, Patrice, I'm going to take a breath here. I'm going to try to not be. Here's the thing. His anger makes me angry, and I'm better than that. Aren't we? Aren't we better than that?
So we should go high?
No.
He's going low.
No,
we go high?
That's exactly
Not
what I
get
mean.
high. Go high.
Thank you. Yes. He gets angry. We just smile and know that we only have 9 months of this to endure.
Hopefully, though.
More State of the Union with Joe Biden coming up next.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's a rollicking Friday morning here on O'Connor and Company. Thank you for letting us be a part of your early morning hours. You know, we keep doing this right up till 9 a.m. when we hand it off to Chris Plant. So if you're listening to us now, well, you should also think about listening to us later if you have a chance, because at 7:05 we'll speak with Congressman Rob Whitman of Virginia. At 7:35, Tim Graham of Media Research Center. And then at 8:05, KT McFarland on the dangers that we face and our allies face around the world. I can't wait to talk to KT McFarland, Patrice Onwuka.
I know.
I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Patrice Onwuka.
Happy Friday.
Something yesterday that the president announced during his speech where he's knuckling under to the pro-Hamas terrorists and protesters that are in this country. And, a certain part of the Democrat base, I guess he thinks he needs to kowtow to the terrorists to win Dearborn, Michigan, and keep his pathetic political career alive for another 4 years. So he's announced that he's going to be ordering the United States to build a temporary port in Gaza, so that so-called humanitarian aid can get to Hamas. But any aid that you're giving to Hamas is not humanitarian aid. You're aiding terrorists. You're aiding the people who murdered over 1,000 innocent people. Also, it's an insult to Israel. And And
It
also,
is.
why did nobody raise the fact that, listen, you think it's a good idea to build a temporary port on the Gaza shoreline to help them get aid? You can make that case. But could we begin first with the discussion of the fact that they're still holding hostages?
Thank you.
Why in the hell would we do this?
Thank you.
Why would we do this for them?
So it's
disgusting.
interesting. What's going on apparently is that the airdrops of aid has been inefficient and ineffective in getting food into the hands. Well, we can thank Hamas for that.
Right.
They're the ones who are keeping the people of Gaza from being able to eat.
And I don't know if you saw the video. If they do drop it in a civilian area, they trample each other trying to get to it because they know if they don't get to it first, Hamas will take it for themselves.
Exactly. Now we use this idea of building a port. Okay, who is going to be there to protect that port? I would think President Biden also said that there would be no U.S. troops on the ground in Gaza, right? So you're going to have some way of ensuring that whatever food distributed at the ports gets to the people and that whoever is distributing from the United States is safe, right?
Yeah.
So that means that there's going to have to be a military presence. And then let's say that military presence is attacked by Hamas. Then what is the United States' response then? Are we then drawn into direct conflict in this case? I mean, I see this idea is fraught with a lot of pitfalls here.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's and again, going back to the most important, well, not the most important thing is that this is rewarding murderers and terrorists while they continue to hold Americans hostages.
Absolutely.
And also it undermines our most important ally. It undermines Israel. He's doing it just to make Rashida Tlaib happy, and it's absolutely obscene. Not the most obscene thing that happened last night in the State of the Union. Here's another one. He pivots and starts yelling at and threatening the Supreme Court justices who were there out of respect, and they
totally unpartisan.
Their job is they're not supposed to react. They're not supposed to applaud.
With all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about that.
First of all, of course, as usual, his voice trails off into incoherent babbling. But what exactly is he threatening the Supreme Court with? You know, women have political power in this country, and you're about to find out. I'm sorry, last I checked, they have lifetime appointments. Or is he, in fact, threatening that if he wins the next election and if there's a majority in the House and the Senate due to the women's electoral power, that they will then, impeach justices, pack the Supreme Court? Either way, a president shouldn't be doing that ever. Can you imagine if Trump did that and threatened the Supreme Court?
This has echoes of when Chuck Schumer, after the Dobbs decision was leaked, Chuck Schumer was making these threats against the Supreme Court, veiled or unveiled, saying that something could happen or that, there's going to be retribution, something along those lines. This harkens back to that.
Yeah.
And it's totally inappropriate for the President of the United States, who says that he's the leader of this country and the leader of his party, to be using the same kind of inflammatory language that his colleagues use. They can use it because they're total partisans. He claims to be the uniter in chief. He shouldn't be threatening the Supreme Court.
Yeah, he should. No, of course he shouldn't, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care. If you're in his way, you are his enemy, not political opponent, enemy. And this is how he treats him. Meanwhile, here he is talking about Trump and trotting out this lie, claiming that Trump told Russia to do whatever they want to do, whatever the hell they want to do in Europe, which is not what he said. I don't even want to unpack again. We did it on our interview with Congressman Mike Waltz yesterday. But here's Joe Biden telling that lie. Thankfully, Republicans were feisty, and they were fact checking him in real time.
Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself. That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers at war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. It wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall."
Yeah, a little context here real fast before I let him finish. Guess what senator went on CNN right after Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and criticized Ronald Reagan for saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall? I'll answer for you. It was Joe Biden. Joe Biden actually opposed Ronald Reagan's position on Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. This is a despicable man. But then he went on further.
Now, my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, do whatever the hell you want. That's a quote. A former president actually said that.
Should I unpack the lie now, or should we wait in a moment?
Oh, you could fact check up the wazoo this entire speech. It's, again, it was a political speech. It was a party election speech. It was not about the actual state of the country or what should be done.
All right, we'll unpack the lie in a moment. I think that your answer is let's unpack it in a moment. So
let's do that.
So that lie that you just heard, that's a direct quote that Donald Trump told Putin to do whatever the hell he wants. We'll unpack the lie for you in just a moment, since CNN won't do it. It's 5:44.
Former Republican president tells Putin, quote, do whatever the hell you want. That's a quote.
No, it's not. There were a lot of despicable lies last night in this incredibly political. This is a campaign speech. It's not a State of the Union.
A campaign speech.
So it was about 4 weeks ago. Donald Trump on the campaign trail in South Carolina, and he was recalling a conversation he had with the leader of a German country when he was telling NATO that each of the countries needed to abide by their treaty that they've been party to for 70 years to commit 2% of their gross domestic product for military spending, because the United States
is reasonable.
Very reasonable, but they've gotten away with it, and the U.S. has done way more, obviously, way more than that. So he's recounting this is not him talking to Putin.
Yeah.
This is him talking to a leader of a large NATO country, and hypothetically about what would happen if Russia invaded. Here's what he actually said.
It was busted until I came along. I said, everybody's going to pay. They said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not. They couldn't believe the answer. And everybody, you never saw more money pour in to Secretary General Stoltenberg. Well, I don't know if he is anymore, but he was my biggest fan. He said, all these presidents came in, they'd make a speech, they'd leave, and that was it. And they all owed money, and they wouldn't pay it. I came in, I made a speech, and I said, you got to pay up. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
All right. Now, you may not like that Donald Trump said that.
Yeah.
But that's
different
from incredible.
telling.
This is how a businessman negotiating with someone, you're negotiating with somebody and they say, well, what if I don't do what you want to do? If you're negotiating, you say, well, if you don't do what I want you to do, then the worst possible circumstance will happen to you. That's how you negotiate something. Does anyone ever raise children here? Well, what if I don't clean my room? Yeah, if you don't clean your room, I'm going to encourage Putin to roll his tanks into your bedroom, son, so clean your room. So that's what he said. One more time, Donald Trump.
Encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay.
So hypothetically talking to a leader of a large country, if you don't pay your fair share and Russia comes in, I'll let him do whatever the hell he wants. Fast forward to Biden last night.
A former Republican president tells Putin, quote, do whatever the hell you want.
Now,
so was he off script when he said that? Because that had to have been vetted 100 times by 50 different people.
They know it's a lie. They don't care.
Because
we're the only ones who will call them on it, Patrice.
But
where's Jake Tapper tut-tutting?
Well, I mean, listen, there were so many fact checks that even the fact checkers at WAPO, CNN, I was looking through all their fact checks. They didn't pick up on this one. But his speech was riddled with flat-out lies to make his record look better than it is. is. I mean, don't gaslight us because we already know. Don't lie to us because we know you're lying to us. You're only lying to yourself when you think that you're trying to convince someone about your accomplishments.
Yeah. You're right, 100%. And the lies are despicable. And of course, if you lie about Trump and Republicans, there's a get out of jail free card. There's no problem with that.
Yeah.
Because how is the media
for most of the media?
How's the media going to fact check a politician for lying about Trump and Republicans when that's what they do every day too? All right. So let's set that aside for a moment, because then he turned his sights on COVID. And this is what he said about Trump's handling of COVID.
4 years ago next week, before I came to office, the country was hit by the worst pandemic and the worst economic crisis in a century. Remember the fear, record losses. Remember the spikes in crime and the murder rate, raging virus that took more than 1 million American lives, of loved ones, millions left behind. A mental health crisis of isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, failed the most basic presidential duty that he owes to American people, the duty to care. I think that's unforgivable.
So again, instead of offering a vision,
Man.
he offers division.
Man, I understand why someone shouted lies.
Yeah.
Who kept schools closed
Thank you.
during the pandemic? Right? I mean, come on, President. Who instituted vaccine mandates on healthcare workers, on the military? Still has that mandate. Will not reinstate those people who lost their jobs and livelihoods.
That's right.
Do not lie to us, President Biden.
Yeah, mental health crisis when it was
goodness.
Gavin Newsom and Andrew Cuomo and every Democrat governor that forced people to stay home and children to stay home. But I'm glad you mentioned the vaccine because he had unbelievable news. And when I say unbelievable, I mean it in the purest sense of the word. News that is completely impossible to believe. Listen to this one.
The vaccine that saved us from COVID are now being used to beat cancer, turning setback into comeback.
Wait, what?
That's right. The COVID vaccine, which, by the way, doesn't really stop COVID, apparently will stop cancer. So get ready for those mandates. Well, he did say he was going to declare war on cancer as president, and he was going to cure cancer.
Wait,
So-
has this been reported anywhere?
I know, it's like a throwaway line, but I mean...
The vaccine that saved us from COVID are now being used to beat cancer, turning setback into comeback.
Somebody quick set up a website of all the crazy stuff Biden said in the SOTU last night.
The COVID vaccine cures cancer.
What?
So there you go. You may have COVID even though you took the vaccine. You may have myocarditis. You may have a host of other
Heart
maladies.
issues.
But cancer is...
You may
cancer
lose
is
your
cured.
hair.
He did it.
Oh, my gosh.
It's 5:53.